All right, all right, all right. We are filled with a plethora of issues today, as far as technical issues and difficulties go. I definitely apologize for the late start. Everything just didn't want to work. Everything didn't want to work today, but I believe if I have it all set correctly now, we should be pretty much good to go. Um, Thank you guys for joining. I'm your host, American Lumberjack, aka Frankie. And this is Timber Talk Navigating Political Force. We're back once again to deliver you some information that you might not know, and maybe you do know, and you just don't talk about it. Hopefully, we can get you talking about things so everybody can be in the know. We want people to be informed, not misinformed or misled by legacy media or really anything or anyone. Um, yeah. I am so excited about today's show overall, though. It's going to be a good show. And I'm glad you guys are back with us to figure out who gets to decide, because whether we're talking about elections, immigration, banking, religious identity, or even what information the public gets to see, every story tonight revolves around authority of some way, shape, and form. Who gets to make the rules? Who gets to enforce them? And perhaps most importantly, who gets to define them? And it seems that we have a definition problem in the United States overall, because people believe that they get to determine what words mean and what words they get to choose and say and do and how it fits their narrative. So tonight we'll look at a proposed change that could give the Postal Service a larger role in election oversight. We'll examine a federal court blocking one of the administration's biggest immigration reforms. The Department of Justice is investigating allegations that some of the world's largest, not just America's largest, but really world's largest banks have discriminated against certain people. We're going to talk about some ICE and all sorts of things. And all of these stories are different, but they have the same question being asked: who gets to decide? So our verse comes from Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2 for today. And it says, "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn." So with that, let's open in prayer and we'll get to the show today. Dear Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for this awesome opportunity to bring forth truth and speak to the nations in one way, shape, or form, God, especially in this politically driven world, this social issue driven world, God. You are still God, and above you, there is no other. So we thank you and give you praise, Lord. And for everyone that is watching right now, under the sound of my voice, Lord, I pray that you bless them in their down sitting and in their uprising, Lord, and protect them as we get deeper into this evil and wicked world, Lord. In Jesus' mighty name I pray, amen. So ultimately, authority matters, right? Because the people making decisions today shape the freedoms of institutions and culture we leave behind for tomorrow. So let's get into it. And I hope everything is set up right, because I have been having a time all day today trying to get everything situated. So I think it's going to be messed up here. So we're going to transition over here. Let me go ahead and mute that stuff. And we're going to, fantastic. It's working how it's supposed to be. It just wasn't working earlier. Our first story today is ICE death toll count, right? So give me 1 second. Let me make sure everything over here. All right, fantastic. Sound is good. I should have checked that earlier, but I was trying to it's just been a time. But ICE death toll count, right? So what's ultimately happening here is ICE is changing how they report their detainee deaths. All right. So the agency is rolling back a policy that was put in place under the Biden administration after C-19, big COVID, right? Under a new memo from acting ICE Director David Venturella, I think that's how you say it, ICE will no longer report deaths that occur within 30 days after the detainee has been released. So instead of ICE just saying, hey, this person died and this is going on our docket, we're returning to the pre-2001 reporting policy and pre-2021 reporting policy, because there were multiple changes that Biden put into place here. So if someone dies in ICE custody, it gets reported if they die after the release, after they are released, whether or not they're in the custody or not. So it gets a ding on the ICE docket, essentially, like I said earlier. The Biden administration argued that the reporting of these deaths provide additional transparency, and that their position was that health conditions may worsen while individuals were in custody. But the Trump administration is saying that they see things differently. Their argument is pretty simple. Once someone is released from ICE, they're no longer responsible for that person's care, treatment, housing, or their decisions that they make, right? Therefore, deaths occurring after release, after they're released, should not be counted as a ICE death, right? So my personal take is now we have to really sit back on this, right? And ask some questions, because you can never go wrong asking questions, ever. And more often than not, when you ask questions, you get answers without ever having to make a statement. Asking questions can make a dumb person look smart if they ask the right questions. So why were they reporting these deaths anyway, right, under the Biden administration? Think about it. If someone dies while in ICE custody, report it. Yes, there's no argument. You won't get one from me. The government should be accountable for people in their custody and the things that happen to those people while in custody. Those should all be documented. But if someone is released and dies 3 weeks later, why is it that they are still being counted as an ICE death? Because if ICE did their job right, the federal government did their job right, they documented what occurred. And if this person did happen to die from injuries related to being detained, then we can say, hey, this is truly an ICE death. However, I don't understand why that was the case when these people's issues weren't necessarily coming from ICE from the get-go. Some of these people were coming across illegally, mind you, because they were sickly. And the Biden administration kind of set this thing up in hopes that they would win again, but also if they lost, it would be like a contingency plan to show ICE not doing what Trump says they're doing, to make it look like things were worse than it actually was. So 30 days is the buffer zone for this situation, right? After 30 days, no more responsibility. So they get up to 30 days after, 1 month for those that are counting, 1 month after being released, they are accounted for. But after that 30th day, going into the 31st day, no more accounting. Because if we are going to count deaths after release, where exactly do we end up ultimately drawing the line? This feels more like a numbers game than a transparency issue. People lie, numbers don't. If you are counting deaths that occur after release, you're creating the impression that ICE was responsible when those deaths occurred, and that somehow, some way, ICE caused it, right? That ultimately affects statistics. It's called padding numbers. The effect that ultimately ends up going on to affect the public's perception of the government. And we already have a low perception of the government, correct? We see that they do things to benefit themselves and not necessarily the people that they are supposed to be protecting ultimately in the land, right? So to me, going back to the original policy is simple, and you're correcting the numbers. And it's crazy that the government never really gets audited. Never do. They audit internally. And we know when people audit internally, things start to look kind of funny, so to speak. And for me, I really don't like how the government is not held accountable by the people, because our voted on representatives aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and they're supposed to be in representation of, not in charge of. So, and we're too slow, ultimately, as we the people, to know when we should be recalling these people for doing illegitimate things, like padding numbers, right? Or spending government money to benefit themselves, which is not really government money, it's our taxpayer dollars. It really is. And when you're speaking of immigration policies running into legal challenges, one administration's biggest visa reforms basically just hit a major roadblock. And thusly, we move into our second story here, and we're talking about 100K visa blocked, right? A federal judge in Boston it blocked Trump's administration's controversial $100,000 H-1B visa fee, right? So the policy was one of the administration's most aggressive attempts to reduce reliance on foreign aid, right? Labor. Ultimately, a lot of people come from overseas to America to get jobs, and they work, and then they're supposed to go back, right? And you have people on the left, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but you have people on the left that are always complaining, oh, you're just using these poor people for their labor. Well, so do you when you go buy those avocados, Sam. Who do you think's harvesting them? And then in the same breath, they'll look at you and say, are you going to pick those fruits and vegetables? Yeah, I would if you paid me enough. But that would consequently make the product price go up as well, right? So Trump put this in place to force reliance on Americans, right? And it was working, right? We shouldn't be relying on foreign labor, and we should be encouraging companies to invest in American workers, even if the costs go up. Because the companies, again, you leftists always complaining that the corporations are abusing the system and they're the ones in control of the government. Trump actually tries to fix that, and you complain about it. So the H-1B visa program allows U.S. employers to hire foreign workers in specialized fields such as technology, engineering, farming, medical, finance, and even education. Each year, Congress caps new H-1B visas at 85,000, although demand exceeded that number over the years, especially under the Biden administration. It's kind of like they became super lax in it, right? In recent years, roughly 70% of the approved H-1B visas has gone towards India, right? Because you've even heard Trump saying that he's going to have more people from India come over here, right? I don't agree with it. I think if America is supposed to be this great country that she says she is, and I do believe she is a great country, I believe that we should be raising our own up instead of bringing others in who may or may not appreciate being in America in the first place. So Judge Leo Sorokin ruled that the administration exceeded its authority by creating with what amounted to be a massive new fee without congressional approval. He called it somewhat of a tax, right? The judge argued that the fee of that size is something that requires congressional approval because the executive branch, according to the Constitution, doesn't get to make up laws that require money, right? And I am inclined to agree with this judge on this aspect. Shocker, shocker, liberal judge, conservative male here agreeing. I agree because he's upholding constitutionality. I don't believe Trump should be able to supersede the Constitution. I don't believe Democrats should be able to supersede the Constitution. I don't believe anyone should, because that is supposed to be what we fall into place under in this country. But that's not the case. That is most certainly not the case, and it hasn't been for quite some time. It hasn't been. So I'm inclined to agree with this situation. However, I do like the proposal. So therefore, what is the solution here? What is the solution? Congress should codify some type of law, take the EO as it's written, make it a law, so we can keep on with business as usual. But they won't do it because they get kickbacks, they get benefits from this stuff. So the White House has already announced they plan to appeal this. Trump, my friend, I don't think you're going to win this appeal. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but constitutionally speaking, that's a numbers game financially speaking, and that is Congress's job, more specifically the House of Representatives. So the lawsuit that caused this to fall into place right now was brought on by 20 Democrat-led states. They argued that the fee would make it significantly harder to recruit doctors, educators, researchers, and other specialized workers. So my thing is, it's like the left can't get right on this, right? They start out speaking right, and then they go wrong. They go completely wrong on this. And the thing is, they're trying to talk out of both sides of their mouth at the same time, and that just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and this is why you're seeing the problem here. It's like, hey, you're using these people, it's slave labor. Then out of the same mouth, in the same breath, they're saying, hey, we need specialized workers, doctors, and so on and so forth from these other countries. What are we talking about? Because really and truly, it's going to be mainly focused within in technology and agriculture. So which is it? Do you want them to pick your fruit and vegetables and make your computers and chips and so on and so forth and advancements, and that not be slave labor? Or is it slave labor and a Republican should do it? Because that's the argument that I get all the time, right? The H-1B program has long been a flashpoint in immigration debates. Large technology companies have become some of the biggest users of the program, and critics are saying, hey, the system allows corporations to suppress wages and avoid investing in America and its workers, Americans. Supporters argue that the visas fill legitimate shortages in highly skilled industries. And what's crazy is you get it in a mixture. It's not all Democrats that are arguing one point and all Republicans arguing one point. They cross over. And there is some validation here. However, I do believe that this should be made into a law. I do think it should be made into a law because it's going to benefit overall. It's not going to hurt. And let's be honest about this fight and what it's really about. It's not about the visa itself. This is about a labor debate, right? For years, Americans have been told they aren't enough or aren't qualified to work. At the same time, Americans have been told to go to college, get a degree, learn to code, get certifications, retain for new careers. So which is it? Because if we are constantly importing highly skilled laborers, right, and workers, no matter the field, at what point do we stop building our own? Right? The administration's argument was actually pretty straightforward. Make H-1B visas expensive enough that companies start asking themselves a simple question. Should we train Americans instead? Now, the judge may ultimately be right on the constitutional issue. Congress creates taxes. Congress creates major fees. That's how the system is set up and how it's supposed to work. I can't argue that. But don't let legal argument distract you from underlying problems. Americans are graduating engineers. Americans are graduating programmers. Americans graduating agricultural farming engineers, right? America is graduating scientists. Yet somehow we constantly are told we need more workers. So somebody's lying. Somebody's lying. I don't know who yet, but somebody's lying. Either we need more workers and we have Americans that can do it, or corporations are running the show. And I'm more apt to lean that corporations are running the show. And I don't even believe that George Sorkin did this as a way to strike back at Trump. I think he did this to help corporations because most of these judges and congressmen and women are on the take. They are. And if you don't believe that, you're stupid. I'm not mincing words anymore. You're not intelligent if you believe that these judges and congressmen aren't on the take of these corporations. That's not a conspiracy anymore. We have documented proof. Speaking of government systems, however, that impact who gets access and who doesn't, the next proposal could give the Postal Service something it never really had before: a direct role in determining how elections work throughout our entire system. Our next story is election delivery, right? So what's happening here is, for years, the U.S. Postal Service and other entities of the sort that they will shuck work off on when they're overloaded have simply delivered election mail. Now, a proposed USPS rule tied to a March Trump administration executive order. Now, this is proposed. Now, I believe this is coming about because they've shot down the hopes of shoring up our elections through law, right? So Trump is trying to do it through EO, and now he's pulling one string on that EO from March to do this, right? This executive order could give the Postal Service a much larger role in an election process. Now, under this proposal, it states that the USPS would be required to provide the states, it would require the states to provide legitimacy of the voters to the USPS, which lists, they have a list of the voters, right? Because they have to deliver this out. The states would be required to give them the requested absentee ballot information and mail-in ballot information, and it would have to match up. 1-for-1 match, right? It states if states ultimately refuse to comply with the USPS, the USPS could potentially refuse to deliver those ballots at all or pick them up, right? Supporters say that the goal is straightforward: improve election security, verify voter eligibility, and create a greater oversight of mail-in voting. If we're not going to get rid of mail-in voting, we need to make sure mail-in voting works the way it's supposed to. Now, you have these critics popping at the mouth, frothing and losing their heads, right? Saying, hey, the proposal would move the Postal Service beyond its traditional role as a carrier into the role of election gatekeepers. So you're going to move from the role of delivering to the role of gatekeeping. If you guys love America and you care about America like the Democrats say they do, why is this a problem? Why is shoring up the elections a problem? Critics also say it's going to disenfranchise people. They love using race and gender to emotionally bait some simple monkey-minded nincompoops right on in, and they reel you right on in, and you don't even wait to be pulled into the boat. You jump into the boat of stupidity yourself, and you're just like, yes, you're going to invalidate blacks. You're going to invalidate women and all this other stuff, right? It's asinine to me. But ultimately, the debate comes as mail-in voting continues to be one of the most contested issues in America, right? It is one of the most contested issues in America. During the pandemic, mail-in voting expanded dramatically across the country, and it was by design. We know it was by design. Supporters argued that it increases voter participation and provides access for military personnel, seniors, and those unable to vote in person. Yeah, that's what it was originally for. Not for people that were fully able. Actually, the original mail-in ballot was for military that were abroad. And we used to wait for those to get back and be counted. And we've gone through several elections where it wasn't counted. They just forewent the whole process of counting military votes. Oh, it took too long. Yet, in some elections, you wanted to hold off as long as possible. You wanted to even push back the election date. All of these things, all of the excuses, but you wouldn't do it for the military. Now, critics are arguing that the larger mail-in voting system becomes, it ultimately starts to have safeguard issues, right? And it becomes more difficult to verify eligibility and maintain confidence in election results. And I tend to agree with this. I do. I don't see this as a problem. Stop telling me blacks can't get ID. Stop telling me it's going to cause women to lose the 19th Amendment. If you were smart and knew how to read in context, women could vote before the 19th Amendment. Black people could vote before the 15th Amendment if you knew how to read. The only stipulation back then was to be a property owner. And then you guys gladly handed over the reins to Congress to create the 15th and the 19th Amendment. And if you read into the second clause of these, it says Congress shall have the power to appropriate this legislation. Why are we giving Congress power when the first 10 amendments take power away from them? It neuters them. So the proposal has already generated opposition from the Democrat states, right? Officials, election administrators, and voting rights groups, many of them argue that the elections are primarily administered by the states and that the federal agencies should have limited involvement. I agree. I agree with that. However, the duty of the federal government, and they are actually doing what they're supposed to do at this point in time, is to make sure that everything runs as it's supposed to. As it's supposed to. And it's not been. And their job as a federal government is to check the states so these things do run as they're supposed to. They haven't been. This is where the conversation gets interesting. For years, we have heard election integrity matters. We've heard that confidence in election matters. We've heard that Americans need to trust the outcome, whether their candidate wins or loses. Okay, I agree. Then how about we get there and you do your part? Because, and this, I'm talking to the states now, because if the ballots are moving through the mail, there should be some level of accountability in the system. We just had the elections ran in LA, in California, and people were burning mailboxes and election ballot boxes. Why? Why? And let's be honest, the Postal Service isn't creating the ballots. They're delivering them. So if the government is asking states to verify who requested a ballot from the start before it's delivered, supporters it would argue that that's not voter suppression. That's actually making sure the right people get the right ballots. So you're telling me the states get to decide how their elections are run, but the federal government can't determine who is voting? I think states have gotten too big for their britches. They've overstepped their authority. And we've allowed it. Yes, you can determine however the heck you want to run your elections. Nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's going to stop you. Run it however you want. However, only Americans can vote. So the federal government is right in this. They do get determined to determine who can and cannot receive a ballot. If you're Don Juan or from Africa, you don't get to get a ballot just because you're here. Unless you've gone through the proper immigration process to become an American citizen, not a green card holder, visa card holder, whatever kind of immigration, temporary protective status, refugee, you don't get to vote in the American elections. You don't. You don't. And it's crazy that we've come to this place and point in America where we just think it's okay to just let anybody just vote. Anybody. Doesn't matter. That's actually a violation of the emolument clause. That was the purpose of the emolument clause. So just not anybody could come in. Now they accounted it for royalty and receiving gifts and all this other stuff because you could be swayed. But now y'all are just trying to leave the back door open and let anybody come in. Doesn't matter where they're from. It's crazy to me. And talking about elections, you know, some people are being damned and have been damned financially and in their business for being a certain political affiliation. Now, this story is probably one of my favorites out of all of these. Now, the last one is a doozy, but this one's probably my favorite one, right? The project debanking. And let's see, pop that off right there. Project debanking, right? Right. And everybody's like, what's debanking? I got you. We're going to get there. The Department of Justice has ultimately launched a sweeping investigation into some of America's largest banks over allegations of political debanking. Federal prosecutors have reportedly issued subpoenas to JP Morgan and Chase, and we're going to get to JP Morgan and Chase later in this particular segment. I have some things to say about them. And Wells Fargo, right? And Bank of America should be on this list as well, but these are the two main progenitors that they're going after with subpoenas, right? Investigators are demanding records related to account closures and the reason behind them, why they were closed in the first place. So the investigations are being iced by interim U.S. attorney, or led by interim U.S. attorney Jeannie Pirro. Now, I don't know if you guys know who she is. Judge Jeannie Pirro, I like this lady. She's a pit bull. She's nothing like that last blonde 304 they had in office, Pam Bondi. Yeah, if you've been watching for any amount of time, you know how I feel about Pam Bondi. You know how I feel about Pam Bondi. Yeah. I feel some type of way about her, but yeah, it's being led by Jeannie Pirro. The probe follows years of complaints from religious organizations, firearm manufacturers, conservative groups, and other customers who claim they were unfairly denied banking services. Now, I don't know where you guys have been, and I'm probably going to go off the rails a little bit on this because I have some knowledge on this, because I have friends who had businesses during COVID that had their businesses shut down because they promoted certain political ideologies. I don't know if you guys remember, but 2021 and late 2020, people were quite literally shut down. Bank accounts closed, bank accounts froze, companies shut down, eBay, PayPal, just kicking people left and right while they were down. Services from big banking industries shut down as well. Well, the Trump administration has issued a priority one on this. The administration officials argue that the American people should not lose access to financial services because of their beliefs, values, or political views. There were churches that couldn't access their bank accounts, right? And Christian organizations that couldn't. The term debanking has become increasingly common over the last several years, and it refers to banks closing accounts or refusing services to certain customers. So that's what debanking by definition means. Banks are now arguing that the decisions banks are making are based off assessments, anti-money laundering rules, fraud concerns, and regulatory compliance. Now, this is where I'm going to go off the deep end. I told you I was going to go off the deep end, and now we've just jumped right off the cliff, right into the deep end of the water here. JP Morgan and Chase, you're worried about fraud. You're worried about money laundering. Well, I have a special on this channel here where we went over Epstein Island and the banks that paid off certain individuals so they would shh and hush. One said bank happened to be JP Morgan and Chase, who held a lot of the funds of dear old Epstein. May he rest in pieces. But yeah, JP Morgan and Chase, what's going on? Because they're the main one arguing about this. You guys definitely, most certainly, are involved in some shady crap. And how you were paying people off and how you were paying to have people fired. Yeah. Fired and removed from government positions, JP Morgan and Chase. Come on. You're not one to be able to argue this at all. The moment you mention fraud and money laundering, sir, ma'am, sir, you guys are wrong. And Wells Fargo ain't got much to say either because y'all have lost people's money. Yeah. Y'all have been sued more times in the last 5 years than most banking institutions have been sued in the history of the banking institution, right? So neither one of these two major juggernauts in the banking world can talk. Y'all are disgusting. This is one of those stories where the facts really do matter more than the accusations. If the banks are closing accounts because of fraud, money laundering, criminal activity, and legitimate risk and concerns, nobody's arguing that. Nobody's arguing that. We're not arguing that because you have the right to do that. You should do that, right? But if the bank is closing accounts because they don't like someone's political affiliation, their religious beliefs, their value systems, that's completely different, my friend. Yeah. That's a whole nother conversation because access to banking isn't some luxury anymore. It's not a luxury anymore. It's infrastructure. And if you're shutting down infrastructure for certain demographics of people, that's a problem. People need bank accounts, unfortunately, in some way, shape, or form. And you need bank accounts to receive payment. You need bank accounts to send payments. You need bank accounts to participate in modern society. Unfortunately, no more the years of hiding money in the mattress and behind the door and inside the walls. That's gone. Unless you are above this, you're not walking around with cases of gold and platinum, right? Most of us aren't billionaires or millionaires. So if the banks are doing these things, they're interrupting infrastructure. They're interrupting society. And no bank should be able to, really, JP Morgan and Chase should be shut down because we know they're in the Epstein files multiple times. Why they're still a thing is beyond me. It's beyond me. And because it is an institution that is controlled by the federal government, ultimately because they have to do business, in order for them to do business, they have to go through the FDIC and the federal government. Shut them down. Shut them down. That is quite literally the pot calling the kettle black in this situation. Absolutely, positively asinine. It is asinine of the highest caliber, my friend. Asinine. And you guys got to start answering questions. You really do. We're not assuming. If the federal government is going after you, bet your sweet butt the federal government just don't go after somebody to go after somebody unless they're politically motivated. But when they're going after companies, they usually have you dead to rights. The federal government has like a really high win percentage when they go after somebody because they generally collect information for years. You know how they always say, well, this person's been on our radar for months, years. We just waited till they committed a crime to go bust them, which is crazy to me. I get letting them commit the crime, but you could at least be right there as soon as they commit the crime to arrest them. But I digress. But it's just crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy to me. Speaking of institutions deciding who gets to have access and who doesn't, the next story we're going to go to involves religious classification. And this one is our last main segment story, right? Because I still got to talk to y'all about the cultural critique and the ding-dongs of the day, right? So this story is a doozy. This next story is a doozy. So we're going to jump right into it. We're not waste your time. This story right here. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong story. We're going to do this one first, and then we'll go to the other one, right? The DOD defines Christianity, ultimately, right? The DOD has been having issues with the Latter-day Saints, and the Latter-day Saints ain't been happy. They ain't been happy because they say they're Christians, but we know they're not. We know they're not. We can call it what it is, right? The Pentagon ultimately has overhauled its military religious classifications and have redefined a statement so that they can clear the air for how things run because it's costing them money and costing us money because they get their money from us, right? And they have reignited a debate that has been around for generations. As a part of an effort to simplify more than 200 religious categories used by service members, the Department of Defense has revised how they show religious affiliations and what is listed for the military. So initially, the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, which has gone through more name changes than most Hollywood stars, they said that, hey, why weren't we among the revised group of Christian denominations on your list? Why weren't we there? The change immediately sparked backlash from these people. They were pissed. And some Utah lawmakers, Senator Mike Lee and John Curtis, you know it's going to be coming out of Utah. You know it's coming out of Utah because nobody else seemingly cared. But coming out of Utah, these two Republican lawmakers, are criticizing the military and the Pentagon and their moves. They're arguing that the federal government has no business deciding who is not and who is Christian. Is that what they were doing? Are they making decisions who is and who isn't Christian? Is that what they were doing? LDS? Is that what they were doing? Officials clarified coming out of the Pentagon saying that the changes were not something that were administrative, or they were administrative and not theological. The Department of Defense says that the goal was to simplify to help the military and the military's chaplains manage resources and religious support services more efficiently. And we need the government to be efficient because when they're inefficient, what does the government do? They come to us with their hands out telling us we're going to give them more money. Basically, taxation without representation. So we like efficiency in the government, right? The debate goes back to the nearly 2 centuries from when this first started, when the military started having chaplains, right? So ever since the founding of the Latter-day Saints movement, people have debated whether Mormonism falls within traditional Christianity. And now I'm about to take my seatbelt off, take my belt off, so I can loosen up and get loose on this because I might say some things, right? Theology has no place in Christianity. Christianity is not a religion. Christianity is a relationship. I don't care if you define religion as they try to define it. Man has corrupted religion to hell and back. So Christianity is a relationship, right? And this is a theological disagreement. What's crazy is no one else had anything to say about this. And they have been removing and changing things for years in this particular sphere in the military so they can make things run a little bit more smoothly. Now, if anyone knows anything about the military, they know that the chaplains ultimately are the advocates. They're the advocates for those in the military. They're basically like HR, or at least they're supposed to be, to keep the military in check. Because, you know, the military can get out of hand sometimes. They be telling people to go run outside, even though there's a heat advisory and the base commander says nobody should be outside doing anything. But you got other people saying we're going to go outside anyway. The chaplains advocate for those in the military. And you have the LDS being big butthurt because their name's not mentioned among the denominations. Mormonism is not Christianity. Neither is Jehovah's Witness. They're not. Christianity is Christianity. Catholicism is not Christianity. Baptist, Protestant, Lutheran, Methodist, none of that is really Christianity. Because nowhere in the Bible can you find Christians, the Bible saying, take up your cross and follow the Latter-day Saints, follow the Baptists, follow all of these people. Yet, somehow, some way, you won on this one. The LDS won. They won on this one. Because the military reneged and went in and the Pentagon said, hey, let's just get rid of it all. We can't beat these people. They're making too much of a constitutional argument when it really isn't. Their argument is founded on feelings. If you are truly a Christian denomination, as you like to call it, why are you arguing just because you're not among a list? Because to be Christian means that I'm Christian. I don't care what the rest of the world thinks. The military is not Christian. Oh, well, we won't get representation and we won't be able to argue. Yes, you can. Do you not know your First Amendment? Do you not know how that works? You have the protection. The Civil Rights Act gives you protection. Yet you want to gripe and moan about not being on a list. My name's not in lights at the Pentagon. That's how I know another reason you're not a real Christian. Because real Christians wouldn't care about that. Because they know their goal is to achieve Christ, not a status from the U.S. military. We should be obtaining Christ. Christ. And I would be, please don't think I'm just jumping on the Mormons' heads. I would be saying this about anybody who proclaims to be a Christian, meaning Christ follower, a part of the ecclesia, which is the church, which is the body of Christ. The Catholics get that wrong. They think the church is an organization. Bend your knee to the Catholic Church. But I digress. It's not about the Catholics. It's about the LDS. You guys are more concerned about notoriety and name than you are being accounted and hearing, well done, thy good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you Lord over many. And because of that, because you're so concerned about your status and name down here on the earth, you're going to hear, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. I never knew you. And that's one of the worst things. Not one of. That is the worst thing anyone could ever hear. Anything. But that's what you want. That's what you want, LDS. So you're going to get it. I hope you change. I really do hope you change. God forbid you stay in the same mindset to care what the world thinks. I'm going to pull back off this because if I stay too long, I'll go off the rails and I'll be here for 36 more hours. That would be fun, but I digress. Our next story here is fake jobs. Fake jobs, real spies. The federal authorities have taken a major step against what they describe as a growing Chinese espionage operation targeting Americans with government and military backgrounds, right? So the FBI and the Department of Justice announced that their seizure, that they've been doing this investigation and have seized 13 websites that are allegedly connected to the Chinese intelligence services. And according to the investigators, the websites pose as a legitimate recruiting firm and consulting company for companies that are in the United States. But that's not the case. It's not the case at all. Authorities say that they were looking for talent, and the talent they were looking for was specifically people that had military backgrounds and security clearance. And that's all they were targeting. It wasn't just for anyone and everyone. But the problem here is that these websites were operating using fake company names, fabricated identities, and AI-generated profile photos. And they also had fraudulent job postings to appear more legitimate. And the thing is, they would get these people on board and pay them like they were really working, but they really wanted your information, what you knew. Some targets were allegedly encountered to or encouraged to share non-public information, and others were reportedly offered payments, sometimes through cryptocurrency, for that same information. But the bigger picture here is that this isn't the first time the U.S. officials have been accused or have accused China of using undercover, unconventional methods to gather intelligence. And for years, the federal agencies have warned that foreign intelligence services, such as what the CCP is implementing here, are increasingly using social media and professional networking platforms like LinkedIn for recruiting just particular individuals, targeting, and they offer big money. Could you imagine you're getting out of the military and your pay's not that great and it wasn't great in the military, and boom, you get a flyer in the email that says, hey, come work for us. We are a military-friendly company who specializes in military personnel, and we'll pay you $100,000 a year. That's more than you were making in service. Most people jump on this. But really, it was just a ploy. It was a ploy. And instead of a dramatic spy movie, like most people think espionage is, and secret meetings and modern techniques like James Bond, right? This all starts with an email, a LinkedIn message, a consulting offer, a friend of a friend telling you about this, right? And I don't fault these people, because Americans are struggling, especially military, when they get out. Most of them have trouble reassimilating into civilian world. So they jump at the ideology or the process of being amongst other brothers and sisters and making lots of money. I get it. But China's really putting in work. They really are. They really are. They're making it look really appealing. Heck, I've seen some military focused job offers off of Indeed.com. I have. Come to find out they weren't real, but I've seen them personally. I've maybe applied to a couple unbeknownst, but after doing my research, I find out these things aren't real. No wonder I never got a call back, right? Not because I wasn't qualified, but because it's not real. So you got to start asking yourself, hey, is this too good to be true when you see these job offers come by? Because before you know it, you might be in handcuffs for colluding with a foreign nation. And a lot of people have been arrested for this. Granted, they didn't know, and they get off, but you don't want to be in that situation. Authorities are saying specifically that they're going after people that are retiring out of jobs from the government, because we talked about the military, but we didn't talk about government people. They're going after people that are retiring out of government jobs. And that's what they're doing. They're getting the military and they're getting the government employees, and they're wrapping them up and taking them for everything they know. Information is power. I personally use information to navigate. I don't ever use it for nefarious purposes. If I have information, it helps me navigate the people I'm dealing with. And that's how it should be used from person to person. But China's trying to use it to get information about our military so they can make something better than ours, or shut down something that's better than theirs. We are in the information age, and we're going to see more of this. And I will definitely revisit this topic because I've visited it multiple times already, but I will be revisiting this. I really will. But now we get to one of my favorite parts of the show. One of my favorite parts. We're going to move right on over to the ding dong of the day. And in this particular segment of the show, or section of the show, these are our ding dongs of the day right here. It's ma'am. It's ma'am. No, that's a man, baby. Happy Pride Month. So, reason why these are ding dongs of the day, if Minnesota didn't have it bad enough as is, why are you letting these people, after you guys, your whole entire state has been ran up and through over all of these allegations and convictions and charges that you guys have got with all the fraud and all this other stuff? You don't need any more attention. Yet somehow you let these people in a city hall to get nuck if you buck, dancing around, waving their flags and their willies like it's okay. The last thing you should be doing, Minnesota, is drawing attention to yourself. You're still dealing with the Somalians. You're still dealing with the daycare fraud. And with the daycare fraud, they were just taking people's money, state and federal. That woman got 42 years. Really, they should have put her under the prison, but I digress. 42 years. And you guys are just willy-nilly just letting it hang out. Letting it hang out. Quite literally hanging out. Pride Month is a joke. This is Men's Mental Health Month. That's exactly what it is. Which clearly some of those men have mental health issues. Why as a local government, state government, federal government, are you propping up social things? Like, I disagree. I'm going to watch it, but I disagree with the White House having a UFC event. Your job is not to entertain the people. Your job is to quite literally run the country. So don't think I'm just getting on the ding dong of the day's head, being Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, because of LGBT activities, because I think that this White House UFC event is a joke as well. I'm only watching it because I like the UFC, but that's a joke as well. You're allowing people to frolic in federal, state, and local government buildings, waving flags, and the only flag that should be waved in this country is the American flag. Not Germany, not France, not Spain. There should be no other flags raised, especially not an Israeli flag, in America. Because if you're in America, you're an American. The only time I'll condone another flag being raised is if a consulate of another country or a dignitary or an individual president, whatever, comes over from another country. And they're in their little car and they got those little flags on the front of their car as they ride down the street. That's fair. That's fair. Or if they're holding a conference and you got an American flag on one side and their flag on the other side to signify the talks between the two nations. That's fair. That's fine. But we shouldn't be doing that. It's crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me. And it gets me fired up because these people don't love America. They just love the fact that America allows them to be perverted and to flaunt it. They've already started the pride parades with males' dicks hanging out in front of children. Oh, you thought just because Trump got in office that was going to go away? It ain't. Women with their tits hanging out in front of children. It's my child. I'm just introducing them to our culture. Culture? Sin ain't no culture. What do y'all have to offer anybody besides STDs and barrenness? I'm going to move on to my cultural critique because if I stay there, everybody's going to be mad, which I don't really care. But I want to get to this last part right here because this really pissed me off. This last segment really pissed me off, right? Really pissed me off. So we're going to jump right into that because... yeah, it pissed me off. Something pretty. Yeah, right here. Let me go back and turn this off. There we go. Can we get that to go off? There we go. There we go. There we go. This is fake. Now, everybody, I'm sure if you live in America and you haven't heard about Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony, the murderer, Carmelo Anthony, then you're living under a rock. But this picture popped up on the internet late or early this morning, really, of a melanated man, and I'm going to say melanated man because usually I would call them other names, peeing on the grave of Austin Metcalf. This is fake. This is not real. But boy, did the internet take to this like hot fire. And in America, we have a culture of division, right? We have a culture of division where one side hates another side because they're Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative with their ideologies and value systems, or Christian and Muslim or Jew and Buddhist, whatever. There's a divide that is perpetrated here, but one of the biggest one is race. Really and truly, it's just a culture or a class issue. Because we're all one human race, right? But this image is fake. But people are pissed off. People are wanting to riot. People are wanting to take to the streets and take lives or make examples of people. But this is fake. It's not real. But people believe it's real. They continue to believe it's real. Guess what? This right here is fake. But people are perpetuating this shit. And pardon my language, but they're perpetuating it. I'm pissed off. They're perpetuating it, and it's further pushing more wedges between society and divide, and it's getting worse. We need the ignorance to stop. It can't stop if we keep letting this happen. This, too, is also fake. It's not even the man's real name. I've looked it up. But this was a rap sheet of the gentleman peeing on the grave. AI image. Let's go back to that. Let's run that back one more time for the one time. If you know anything about photo editing, and I used to do a lot of it, I love photo editing. Before AI ever was a thing, didn't exist. You had to do it manually. You could see some telltale things that this is not real. Most people can't catch it, but I caught it. But it's fake. It's fake. But the problem here is, in our culture, we have a divide that continues to pull people left, continues to pull people right, continues to pull people into financial classes. We are all human. You put your pants on one leg at a time just like anybody else. We're all human. Yet this whole Carmelo Anthony case has caused riots, and it's not going to stop. You have ignorant individuals that create AI photos to make things worse. And you have ignorant people who don't do their due diligence to go look this up. Now, one thing I can say about people like this and how I figured out it was fake is when black people do things, ignorant black people, when they do things, they really do those things. They don't go around faking things like this to stir up controversy. They take pride. Ignorant blacks take pride in doing stupid stuff like this. But that wasn't real. But what is real is the outrage that people are feeling. But also what's real is the ignorance of people that don't go do their due diligence and look this crap up. America is suffering culturally from ignorance and inability to comprehend what they read. Because if they could, they would stop missing the forest for the trees. I'm your host, American Lumberjack, and I have enjoyed being here with you today. I hope to see you next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for another walk through the political forest. Have a good night.